everyone, welcome back to Peer and Test Drive. Today we've got two generations of the best-selling Mercedes model in recent years, the GLC. On my left is a 2018 X253 generation GLC, and on my right is a 2024 X254 generation GLC. Now the older one is a 300 model and the newer one is a 43 AMG model. So they're not exactly comparable in terms of performance, but we're gonna look past that a little bit and talk about what this 6-year age gap is like, from how the old one has aged to how the new one has evolved. Let's get started. Back in 2018, a GLC 300 had a starting price of around 46,000 Canadian dollars, and a 43 AMG model had a starting price of around 62,000. This one, as spec, including options and delivery, was about 58,000 Canadian dollars. However, fast forwarding it to today, a 24 or 25 model year GLC 300 starts at around 60,000 Canadian dollars, and a 43 model starts at around 80. This one, as tested, is about 100,000 Canadian dollars. Pretty expensive, but let's see what you get for your money. Under the hood, although both GLC use a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, they are drastically different. The one in the old GLC 300 model produces 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque, whereas on the new GLC 43, this is a one-man, one-engine real AMG M139L engine. This has a 48-volt mild hybrid system along with a big turbo and an electric motor slapped between the hot side and the cold side of the turbo to eliminate turbo lag. The end result is almost double what this produces at 416 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Both these vehicles use 9-speed automatic transmissions, but this uses a normal torque converter, whereas this one uses a AMG MCT or AMG multi-clutch transmission. Both of these vehicles also feature all-wheel drive, but this one has rear-wheel steer as well. From the outside, aside from this having the big AMG package, they actually look quite similar. LED headlights, big Mercedes silver arrow in the middle, and the big grille. You can clearly see that this is an evolution of this. Now, I must say that the 43 with the AMG styling and bumpers, it looks really, really good. Over to the side, aside from the AMG treatment on this one and the big rims, their styling and dimensions both remain very similar. This one is about 6 centimeters longer, but in terms of height, in terms of width, they're very, very similar. Both of these vehicles have keyless entry on all 4 doors, as well as night packs that you can option if you don't like the chrome. In terms of suspension, both these vehicles use double wishbone suspension in the front and multi-link setup in the rear. But of course, this being AMG, it's got AMG tuned suspension along with adjustable dampers. As far as wheels go, on the GLC 300, 19-inch rims come standard, but these are on winter 18-inch wheels. Whereas on the GLC 43, 20-inch rims come standard, but these are the upgraded 21-inch rims, which I think looks really, really good. The GLC 43 also feature very beefy tires, 265 wide in the front and 295 wide in the rear. Oh, yes, and also GLC 43 gets 4-piston front brakes. Around back, a continuation of this evolution theme. The new one looks very similar to the old one, but of course, I think Mercedes has done a great job updating the looks. I think the new one looks a little sleeker and a bit more modern. In terms of trunk space, the new one is a little bit bigger. However, it's nothing too drastic. The basic functionalities are still the same. You still have privacy covers on both. You still have the buttons to fold down the rear seats, along with some extra trunk space underneath the trunk floor. Jumping into the front seat of the new GLC, you've got a fully digital instrument cluster, a head-up display, along with a big central touchscreen that's run on MBUX. Now, as I mentioned in the E-Class review that I did back in 2024, the system is good, the software is fast, The icons are big, so they're relatively easy to touch. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, along with a pretty accurate voice assistant system. However, of course, barely any physical buttons. In terms of amenities, heated steering wheel, heated front seats, and memory front seats come standard, but this vehicle also has upgraded ambient lighting as well as a Burmester sound system. The two-tone brown and black leather interior you're seeing right now is also an optional extra. Alright, let's talk about the steering wheel. I do like the look of it, I do like how sporty it feels, and I also really like the rotary dials at the bottom here for your drive control and suspension, exhaust, that kind of stuff. I like these two dials. However, man, these touchpads are frustrating to use. The steering wheel blades sort of slant forward, so when you use the touchpads or any of the buttons on the blades, you kind of have to put your finger into this awkward position to be able to navigate through these buttons. And during my time of testing, the touchpads, sometimes up is down, down is up. I don't really know what's going on. It's just not accurate, and it's very frustrating to use. Mercedes really needs to fix this. Anyway, moving on, let's jump into the back seat of this new GLC, and then I'll show you the rear seat of the old GLC as well. This is the space you get in the new GLC, and this is the rear seat space of the old GLC. Now, as you can see, the space is pretty similar, and amenities also very similar in the back. You get panoramic sunroof, some air vents, and then you can also option for window sunshades as well as heated rear seats. Now, jumping into the front of the old GLC, everything is kind of back to basics here. You've got real actual physical dials for instrument cluster along with a screen in the middle, and a infotainment screen that's, again, pretty small for today's standard. It's not a touch screen, so you have to control it using the rotary dial here, which I think works great, in my opinion. You also have a bunch of physical buttons here to control everything you need, from climate control, volume, all that sort of stuff, which, in my opinion, works better than the touchscreen over on the new one. Now, the infotainment system here doesn't support Android Auto, nor does it support Apple CarPlay, but it does have built-in navigation. To be honest with you, I think the center console design here has aged very well. I don't think it looks outdated aside from the screen. Also, I need to give credit where credit is due, because these synthetic leather seats have aged very well, and after 6 years, they're in pristine condition. Last week, we test drove the Lincoln Aviator, which actually had a similar amount of horsepower, and the price tag was also similar to this. But the GLC 43 certainly is more of my style. Oh, 416 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque from a tiny 2-liter 4-cylinder engine is properly impressive. Barely any turbo lag, engine pulls all the way to red line. The M139 engine is very well engineered. I do miss the V6, but Mercedes has made sure to put a lot of extra theatrics to this new GLC 43, whether it's from the exhaust from the outside or the speakers from the inside. There's a lot of drama driving this car aggressively. Now, this car is most at its element when being driven hard, accelerating hard, braking hard, shifting aggressively, those kind of activities. It handles great, shifts fast, and performs exceptionally well in those aspects. Oh, look at that. However, if you want to just take it easy, get from point A to point B, it sometimes feels like the car doesn't let you do that. The suspension is a little too stiff even in comfort mode. I can hear all of the imperfectness of the road, and it's just pretty bumpy. The brakes are also pretty difficult to modulate. It's really finicky in terms of trying to brake smooth, and the transmission is also a little bit clunky. But my biggest problem with it is that sometimes it feels like the car is learning how to drive manual for the first time, and that it's still trying to figure out the bite point. The MCT gearbox in the V8 AMGs doesn't behave like this, so I don't really know what's going on here. It just feels like the execution of the tuning with the multi-clutch is just not done well. On the old GLC 300, because it doesn't have regen braking from the mild hybrid system, the brakes feel normal, and yeah, the gearbox is also smoother, but of course it's not nearly as fast. When it comes to fuel economy, it has improved, but considering that Mercedes has downsized the GLC 43 from a 3-liter V6 to a 2-liter inline-4, I wouldn't say it's impressive. City driving, I'm averaging 14-15 liters per 100 kilometers, but on the highway it's not bad at about 8.5 liter per 100 kilometers. The M256 inline-6 that Mercedes put in the 450s and the 53s, on the other hand, seem to be quite a bit more efficient. As for the old GLC 300, I average about 11 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and about 8 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway. Okay, let's jump into the old GLC 300 and talk more about it. In terms of safety tech, there are of course more available in the new GLC, like evasive steering, highway lane change assist, so on and so forth. However, this old GLC isn't nearly as dated as you would think, because it still has emergency braking, blind spot warning, lane departure, as well as the intelligent drive package, which allows you to do adaptive cruise control as well as lane centering. Now, I would say, however, that the active driving assist systems feel a lot more confidence-inspiring and refined in the new Mercedes compared to this old one. I think Mercedes has done a lot of improvements behind the scenes when it comes to safety technologies. As far as reliability goes, on this 2018 GLC 300, everything is going great, knock on wood. The owner told me that this car has never given him any issues aside from a 12-volt battery swap replacement a few months ago. All that he's done is regular maintenance, oil change, brakes, filters, that sort of stuff. On the new GLC 43 front, obviously it's a new model, so we don't have a lot of information yet in terms of reliability, but considering that it's a tiny 2-liter engine producing over 400 horsepower, the engine seems quite stressed, and in addition to that, there are a lot of electric components like the electric turbo, the 48-volt mild hybrid system, so on and so forth. So I think all of these are consideration points as to how reliable it might be if you want to own that vehicle long term. To wrap up, I think Mercedes has put a lot of effort and a lot of engineering into the new GLC 43, and it performs very, very well when driven hard. But in my opinion, a 43 should feel more of like a middle ground between a 300 model and a 63 model, whereas the 43 that we just tested feels very close to a 63 in terms of roughness. I think it's just a little too rough and too aggressive for non-spirited commuting when you want to drive comfortably. But as far as generational comparison goes, Mercedes has made improvements to infotainment software, the safety tech, the efficiency, and design-wise, I think the new GLC looks great. BMW. But in my opinion, the touchpad on the steering wheel needs to go, and the rotary dial in the center here needs to make a comeback. As far as price tag goes, $100,000 for a GLC 43 is quite a lot, and obviously getting a GLC 300, it removes that fun element, right? So maybe with a little bit of depreciation, a previous gen GLC 43 with the V6 might be the sweet spot. What do you guys think? Comment down below which SUV in this category you'd pick. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.